Now, with that being said, why do you think the hip-hop culture, for example, rappers really gravitate to your original book, the 48 Laws of Power?
Well, they also gravitate to the Art of Seduction.
Yeah, true, that's true.
But, the rappers, well, when the book came out, which is 98, it was a real turning point in hip-hop where a lot of artists were really looking towards becoming business people, because owning your own label, owning your own music is the game. For so many decades, particularly black musicians in America were just unbelievably exploited. I mean, you read stories of someone like Duke Ellington, who you would consider, incredibly famous and successful. This was a man that, by the time he died, he didn't have any money. So traditionally, the black musician was the most exploited of all. And so they were beginning to think of how to turn that around. And, the music business is just really a shark-infested environment. And it's all about exploitation to the max, where the labels try and seduce you into a cushy arrangement where they take care of everything. I've seen it personally now in doing the book. They try and seduce you with all of these perks and a good life, but in the end they're owning your music, and they get rid of you after a few years, and they bring in somebody else, and you're left with nothing. And so that period, people like Jay-Z, etc., others, were looking to do it differently. And this was a book that wasn't all sweet and nice. It tells you, here's how you have to do the finances, and it's not a business book. It's a book about the real crap that goes on, the real games that people are playing. Things like get others to do the work, but always take the credit, things like that. And so I think that it hit at the right moment. It was kind of lucky. And they found that this was going to help them figuring out what the record labels were up to. And, I started, in 2001, I started seeing signs of this. Like Jay-Z was quoting the book in an interview, and others were doing that. And then subsequently they told me that it wasn't really the rappers themselves that discovered the book. It was more the managers,
right.
People like Chris Lighty, who ended up giving it to rappers, etc. But people who were managing their careers and trying to figure out what was going on, because these were a lot of these guys like Chris. They didn't have they don't have a business background. Everything they learned on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no book they could read that would help them figure this strange new world out. And I think this book came out at the right time, and the honesty, I think, was really helpful for them.
All right. Now, obviously, most people know that 50s, he's dealt with a lot of things that most people haven't, from his mum being murdered to not knowing his father to also being shot 9 times. I mean, how do you think that has created him into the person he is today?
Well, you mean all of the harsh...
Yeah, all the harsh realities that he's had to deal with.
Well, it clearly made him who he is. I mean, there is some clay that he had to work with, which is, he often talks that he has an inordinate amount of ambition and drive. And that's probably true. It's if he wasn't so ambitious with all of the things that happened to him, maybe he wouldn't have amounted to anything. I think a lot of that ambition and drive is something that comes from his mother, because his mother was a real hard-nosed, tough, ambitious woman. But saying all that, his experiences played a huge part in who he is. It's hard to imagine, but having no parental figure, never knew his father, and his mom was murdered when he was 8, and he grew up with his grandparents who had 10 other kids to look after, and he was kind of the odd kid out because he was, I think, the youngest, and they just didn't have time to deal with him. So he was on his own. So he learned early on the reality that most of us don't realize until we're 38, which is you're alone in this world. You think everyone's going to help you, and you can depend on people, and you slowly learn, unless you're really lucky, that most often you have only yourself to depend on. He knew that when he was 10 years old, so that had a huge impact on who he was. And then seeing all the violence and stuff going on around him sort of opened his eyes to what he didn't want in life. He didn't want to be someone who wanted to escape with drugs or alcohol or whatever it was, because a lot of hustlers and people that he saw, they were just trying to escape the harshness of the world or something, and he didn't want that. He wanted to be strong and build something for the future where he wasn't dependent on these things. And then, of course, being shot was probably the key moment. Not so much being shot, because as he told me, he saw people being shot dozens of times, and when it actually happened to him, it felt like it was in a movie. It almost wasn't real to him. It wasn't that so much, but it was afterwards when his whole life fell apart and nobody was there for him, and the record label dropped him, and it looked like he was either going to get killed again, or someone was trying to finish the job, or he was ruined, that he realized, he has to, it's only on him to get out of this situation. If he could fell into self-pity or depression, that would be the end of him. And so that was a key moment in which he got back on his feet and did the mixtape campaign in 2001 that brought him to where he is now. So, his experiences definitely molded him. It's just, coming close to death like that is something a little bit obviously is unusual, but of course all of us, as we say in the book, share the same fate. So we may not be experiencing some of the extreme things that he experienced, but life is life. It's not like, he's a human being. It's not like what he experiences on another planet. It's something very human,
right.
And it's something we can all learn from as far as how to deal with adversity, how to know how to be self-reliant, how to not be afraid of death and change and all that other things. So, on the one hand, his experiences are unique, but they're also very human.